the mic to see how loud the mic is. Hello? Am I streaming? Ah, yes. There he is. Alright. Alright. So, this is a coaching session for ZenMavis or ZenMavis. He's also a fellow Kai player. And I just got done with a session with him. So, this is basically going to be me coaching him on how to improve his Kai to get beast level Kai. So, alright. So, the first thing I kind of want to talk about is, I guess, openers. And what I mean by that is this right here. So the round starts. I want to talk about your options that are, like, basically, like, the best options that you have as Kai. Because he has a few different options, and a lot of them are, like, dependent on, like, I guess, like, frame data, but also, like, what you think your opponent is going to do, risk-reward situations and stuff like that, right? So, so let's go over Kai's options right here. Kai's fastest move that he can actually hit somebody with at mid-screen is 2S, or a crouching slash, right? So, I gotta point out that not every character in the game has that. Not every character can even reach you from start range, let alone have it be a low, right? So, let's talk about what this means. So, a solid opener for Kai is crouching 2S, like right at the start of the battle, right? Depends on how much you want to, how confident you are, and just to see what you think your opponent might do. So, let's say we're fighting another Kai who does like a slower move. This is what it should look like. Just like that, right there, right? Like, you actually try to do that a couple times, but most of the times, like, maybe you were like a frame off. So I would say practice that right there. Just get used to getting that frame 1 button input so you can get it as soon as possible, and you can, like, counter hit anything that's less than or anything that takes more than 10 frames to come out is going to get counter hit. Right? See, like, not even I can get it every time, but it's a skill worth having, because then you can do it all the time, and look at that, you get a counter hit. So what do you get off of a counter hit? You get, like, Future Arc, right? You get that right out the gate, and then you're right in their face with plus frames, so that's really good. So there's that, right? There's starting with 2S, but 2S actually loses to stuff, right? So let's I'm gonna set Kai to do something, the other Kai, and instead of having him do this slow move, we're actually gonna have him do this one right here. So we're gonna have the other Kai to do 5k at round start, right? Now, this slash move right here actually loses to it because of the hitbox. Right? See? Right there. I got it frame perfect. So that 5K wins because it's faster, and it also has a disjointed hitbox. So right off the gate, you see, like, you almost have like a rock paper scissors kind of scenario here. Like this, starting with 2S will beat most slash attacks that either don't reach or have more startup frames, right? So that's why this is such a good opener. But it actually loses to other moves like jabs and stuff, right? Right. So you should be thinking right away, like at the start of every match, you know, like in that session that we just played. You know, you should, while you're playing and trying to win, obviously you're trying to win and trying to do your combos and trying to implement whatever tech you're trying to do, but every set is also like information, right? Like, you should be paying attention to the options that I like to regularly use, because that's information that you can use to turn the tables and beat me, right? So like, I like to always start with this right here. You know, that's like one of my favorite starters. But now you know that this will shut that down right away, right? So like now that you know that, you should be thinking like before, like right before a round start, you should be thinking, okay, I'm fighting Vision. I know that this is his favorite opener. You know, what beats that? What's a non-committal way to beat that? And that's 5K, because it has no end lag. You know, so it's going to be really hard for me to whiff punish. And it's not like Fuja Arc either, where, like, you know, where it has a lot of commitment. You know, there's a lot of commitment in Fuja Arc. Like, it's more of a hard read, which I did sometimes. You know, but that, if you don't have a hard read, if you don't have, like, hard evidence to believe that your opponent is going to do X, it might be better to not do that, you know? Like, you basically, I kind of feel like you should probably shave off as much commitment as possible until you actually have a valid reason to choose the option that might have more commitment, but hey, you've got enough evidence, you know, backing up your reasoning that would say, hey, this move is actually gonna connect, you know? So let's talk about another thing, like, you opened up with this a lot, too. Like, I can't remember what it is, but you would open up with that a lot. I would say that's kind of a risky opener. It's, like, really risky, but also doesn't really give much advantage, right? Because you don't have any meter to cancel it into anything. And then, like, even if it hits, like, I don't even know what the frame advantage is. It's not going to be a lot. Like, even if that static edge hits me, it's not going to be a lot of frame advantage, right? So, I just feel like there's stronger ways to start off the round. And I just gave you two, right? You got this one right here for if you want to be, like, really offensive. You know, if you want to be offensive, do this one instead of this right here, I would say. If you want to be defensive, you've got this one right here. Like, hey, if you think the opponent is going to swing at you with like a 5S or a 2S or something like that, this guy's going to stuff it, right? And then you also have, at the start of the round, you were doing this too, right? You were doing that. That's like a good starter too, because, you know, you can't really punish it. I think only a few characters can actually hit you out of it. You know, at round start. I think maybe Nagoriyuki and maybe Ramlethal, I think. I'm not sure. That one needs a little bit more... Like, I need to actually take a look at that and see. But in general, this is a pretty good one. But I think the one thing I would emphasize for you to work on is downloading your opponent, right? Like over the course of the set, you should be, like... The way that you play should be evolving with the evidence and the data that you're collecting from me, right? So, like, let's turn the tables and see what I was thinking about you when we would play. I know that you like to start with that, right? So I would like run underneath you and go for a grab, or I would start off with Fudra Arc because you had 3 openers that I noticed that you had. You had backdash, you had this thing right here, and you had crouching slash, which is good, you know, obviously good, but you were just off, like by a couple frames, right? If you're going to be doing this, you need to be right on, you know, you need to hit the button at like a perfect frame to make it valid. Otherwise, you don't, you know, the fact that it's only 10 frames means nothing if you're not getting the input correctly, right? So yeah, I don't think you were really that confident in using this one. So most of your openers were this and this, right? And that leads me to do Fudra Arc. Normally, like a high committal move, I was like so confident that it would hit because I know that these are your 2 favorite openers, the backdash and that thing right there. And Fudra Arc covers both of them. And Fudra Arc even beats 2/2, right? Like, we'll go ahead and set it to, like, this happened a couple times, I think. Right? So we'll do that. Round start. Let's see what happens. Oh, whoops. I did the wrong one. I mean, I gotta do this just to demonstrate it, but you already know what's gonna happen, right? So... there you go. So, see, that's what happens there, right? So, like, this right here, basically, like, all of your options that you use at round start, this thing will beat, right? So, that's why you need to be paying attention at round start and see what options that I like, right? So, like, if I'm round starting and doing this, and, you know, that's, like, really committal, right? So that should kind of tell you, like, hey, he's, like, hard reading my options. You know, like, he knows way too well what I'm doing, and that's not good for me, so I need to switch it up, right? So let's see. Let's talk about... that's like round openers right there. I'm gonna turn this thing off. This, position thing, because hopefully you learned a little bit about that part right there. Is anybody watching? I don't know. I've got my stream up. There's one person watching, but I don't know who it is. I have my chat up too. I just have it up on my phone. So if that's you, Zen, and you want to like ask anything, you can just type in the chat. Let's see. Okay, so hopefully that's one thing that you you can start to improve on is your openers. Have a more solid opener, because if you think about it, this game is like really like snowball heavy, right? Like it's almost like, yeah, there he is. There's ZenMavis. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so let's consider the like, I'm not sure if you've been watching the whole time, but I just went through openers, right? And I think you need to have a solid opener, because this game is like really snowball heavy, and it's almost like some games are like dictated right from the opening, you know, right from the round start screen, you know, like just because of how this game works, right? So, okay, so let's pretend that you have your openers down. You know that this is a solid opener. You know that this is a solid opener. You know that this is a solid opener. And I would say even sometimes jumping can be helpful too, right? I mean, that's one where, like, you know, obviously you can block stuff in the air. They can't grab you. They can't air throw you. You know, it's kind of like, it's a high committal option for them to jump up and air grab you. So that one could be, like, that one's okay too, but I don't think it's the strongest. There's like some starting matchups that can probably hit you out of the air, you know? So that's like matchup dependent. Okay, cool. All right, so you saw the beginning. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing, right? So one thing that you in particular, I think, maybe Goob too, is like, I feel like you guys, or I feel like you in the set, kind of struggle in neutral, where if we're at this distance for long enough, you're eventually gonna just be like, okay, I'm gonna force something. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna do that, right? Like that, like you'll do that, and that's not like just you. That's like that's. One second, let me turn this off real quick. Alright, so this thing right here is really typical when people aren't really comfortable with the neutral and using their other less committal normals, right? Because like I'm like I was actually practicing this in our set, you know, like in some games I like whiff this move all the time, right? And I'll whiff this one as well. Like I always think that it has longer range than it actually does, which is, you know, like, that's not good because you don't want to be whiffing, right? You don't want to be whiffing these moves because they can be whiff punished, but you also don't want to be doing this all the time either because it's really reactable, you know, like, unless you're in some kind of hit lag, it's so easy to see that coming and just 6p it, right? So now, I think I'm a little bit better at it than you are, but hey, that's why I'm making this video, to help you, you know, to try and coach you so you can be way stronger in the neutral. So, first of all, you can actually notice yourself when players want to do this, right? Because, like, I can tell, like, pretty quickly when my opponent is like, hey, I don't know a whole lot about neutral, so I'm gonna, like, force this interaction here. I'm gonna dash in, get a counter hit, or collect plus frames because I'm coming downward on my heavy slash, and then I start my pressure from there, right? Like the fact that it's so committal makes it really risky if your opponent is like watching and waiting and actually playing footsies with you, right? So let's see. Let's learn how to play footsies. I was actually literally making the script for my Kai neutral video, so hey, I guess you get like a sneak peek at what I'm gonna actually make the video about. But this move right here, this one right there, 6 HS, 6 heavy slash, that's Kai's longest range move, right? So what does that mean for us? Like if we're out in this range right here, you know, nothing else hits, but that one right there will hit, right? So we need to like keep note at that range, right? Because that's really important. If we're in this range right here, this one's not gonna hit, that one's not gonna hit, none of these hit, but this one will, you know, that's when you should be like, okay, hey, I'm in 6 HS range. Instead of doing this, or instead of doing like a super laggy stun edge that has like a lot of end lag, you should instead be thinking like, hey, this move right here is actually in its peak performance range, right? So when you're doing this, you're doing this for a few reasons. Like there's a multitude of reasons why you would do that. So first of all, this thing right here is good to stop opponents from coming in, you know? Like if they're trying to do like this right here, they're trying to come in, you know, that can actually hit them. That'll hit them trying to come in and give you that big juicy counter hit. Or what this is also good at is, hey, maybe you're out here and your opponent is maybe trying to do the same thing. Maybe he's trying to play footsies, right? And he throws out an attack. Like, if you're at this distance right here, you should know, like, hey, no move that this Kai has is going to hit me. You know, I'm, like, actually safe. Except for maybe that right there. Except for maybe Stun Dipper. You know, no normal is going to hit from here. So when you're out of range, you should be actually looking at, like, paying close attention to your opponent to see, like, hey, what is he going to do? Because as soon as you see him press a button, like, maybe, as soon as you see him do this, and it whips, that's your cue to be like, oh man, counter hit time, whiff punish time, you know? And then you go in, and then you get the hit, and you get the combo, or you at least get the knockdown. Right, so just to go over that again, max range move for Kai right here, right? There was a few times where I can tell that you have a habit of doing this, where like you would get knocked down like far away, right? Maybe if I bursted you off or something, or maybe you bursted me, right? You would always run in and try and do that, right? But there's like you weren't spacing it properly. You got to remember that this move right here is actually also one of Kai's slower slash attacks, right? And I remember catching you a couple times, trying to come in and hit me with that, and I would stuff it with a 5S or a 2S. You know, so that's like another thing. Like, you need to make sure, like, when you're using this move, you're in the optimal range for it to hit. Because once you're in this range right here, and you're gonna do it, if I chose to do this or this at the same time that you did 6 HS, your 6 HS will lose, generally, because it's slower. It takes more frames for it to come out. Alright, so that's why, like, space management is really important. Because, once again, you know, like, hey, if you make this move whiff, or if I get a counter hit, guess what? I get big damage on you, I get the knockdown, and then I get my Oki, right? Like, that one situation could lead to you losing the whole game, all because of that whiffed 6 HS, right? So that's 6 HS. So let's talk about. I don't want this to be like too long, so I'm gonna kind of skip 5 HS for now. Just know that it has more range as 5S and 2S. And is like the optimal... Oh yeah, actually, no, I do want to talk to you about this part. Because this is one thing that you kind of fell into a lot. Right, so... You got this one right here, right? Now, there's no other actual, natural, normal move that comes after this. It has to end in itself, where you just don't do anything. Or you end in a special, right? So... I'm gonna try and help you use this to gain information out of your opponent, right? Because you can actually do that by using this move. I'm gonna turn on counter hit on block. Let's have Kai do something. Crouching. Okay, let's do this. This is Kai's fastest move, right? So let's see what happens. Right? See, look at that. It whiffs. Right? If he wants to press a button, right, you don't have to do anything. Like, you could just do you could just do this and see how he reacts, right? Because if you don't know what your opponent's going to do, if you don't know how to react, that you got to consider that all of Kai's extenders are committal to some extent, to some point, right? Like, that's committal right there. That's not as committal, but it's minus, right? So that's not really... Like, it's minus and also leaves you closer to the opponent. So it means that your ability to mash out after doing dire eclat isn't really that great, because you're, like, minus on it. So that's not always something that you want to do either. Right? Let's see. You got Stun Edge, right? So this is where, like, I would say that, like, this normally... Like, the enders for this right here are best, is like Stun Edge and Charge Stun Edge. And that's even matchup dependent too, right? Like, if you're fighting a Ramlethal, doing this can actually be kind of risky. Because I'm not sure, but I think she might be able to hit you out of that. Right? So, once again, it's very matchup dependent. But if you do this by itself, you know, this is like a perfect data gathering tool, right? You don't have to commit. It's safe. Your opponent's like way too far away to hit you or do anything, right? So a good thing to do is be like, hey, well, you know, I don't have enough data on my opponent. Maybe you're in your Celestial challenge, right? And you're fighting somebody. Maybe you're fighting another Kai. and you obviously want to win, but you don't have any data on your opponent. You don't know how they like to play. This move right here can help you gather data and see how they're reacting. Like, are they mashing out all the time, or are they backdashing all the time? You know, like, what are they doing? So this right here allows you to gather data and see how they're responding to you without actually putting yourself in any danger, if you know what I mean. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes sense. Alright, so let's talk about, I guess we'll go ahead and just go through the enders, right? So we kind of already did, but that right there, you know, it's safe. You got stun edge, you know, it's faster and less committal at the front. And then you have this, which is more committal at the front and less committal at the back, right? And this is where this comes in, because sometimes, like, hey, what if they're, like, sometimes opponents like to sit there and block after they, you know, because they're a little wary of pressing a button. Well, hey, now they have to sit and guard that, which gives you another setup to do. You know, you can rinse and repeat, or you can use the knowledge that you just gained and be like, hey, this guy blocks a lot. I'm gonna run in and grab his ass, right? So that's how you use that move right there. That's how you should be thinking when you're doing moves, especially moves where maybe your opponent blocks it, right? You always want to be looking and see, like, hey, how does my opponent respond to this thing right here, right? You want them to do something, and you want to do as little as possible. You don't want to open yourself up or overextend or do an overcommittal move especially with no data, and then, like, lose a round of it. Lose the round because of it, right? So just to go over this thing one more time, it has more range than this one, has more range than this one, but has less range than that one, right? So it's almost kind of like between 5S and 6HS as far as range goes, right? So I would suggest definitely, like, whenever you get the time, just go into practice mode and really note the range of these moves, right? Because it's, like, the range is really important. Not only the range, but distance management as well, right? So, like, you don't want to be doing these moves, you know, where your opponent might be able to take advantage of your minus frames and, like, do something and grab you or whatever, right? So let's see. What else? We got this one right here. 2S. Now, you know why that's good. It's his fastest move at 10 frames. You know, this one is 12, this one is like 14, and this one is like 15 or something like that, right? Now, this is his fastest move, so that's why you would use this. That's why it's our round starter go-to. Because it's the fastest of Kai's longest range moves. Comes out at 10 frames, and also, you know, use at max range. You know, the opponent generally can't reach you, which means that you can end it in one of your stun edge or charge stun. Excuse me, stun edge or charge stun edge or whatever. Now, this is another thing that I would say also. Once again, you need to be paying attention to how your opponent reacts, because if you, let's say you have a nasty habit of doing this, right? Whoops. Doing that right there. Doing 2S into stun edge or 2S into charge stun edge. You know, sometimes people might get away with that so much, and it becomes like a bad habit. Because, like, if your opponent knows that it's coming, they can actually just do this. They can block the 2S and then just instant air dash over you and hit you, right? So once again, like, this is like a big aspect here. Like, I think this is like the one main aspect that I feel like your gameplay actually needs, is the concept of watching your opponent and, like, downloading them and gathering information, right? Because, like, the one thing that I noticed in our games is that, like, I would, like, read you. I would hard read you on multiple options, but you didn't really switch it up. You still stayed with with the options that you like to do normally. Maybe that might be like a sign of a couple things. Maybe you're struggling on downloading your opponent and looking at the data that they're giving you. Or maybe you're just so maybe not as confident in the other options that you have, or maybe you're not aware of other options, you know? So that's why this video exists, to tell you, hey, these are some better options, and also to point out the importance of, like, looking at your opponent and seeing how they respond to you and, like, downloading them, so you can, like, if they download you and start hard reading your options, you know, you'll know, like, hey, this guy is hard reading me, you know, that means I'm doing this move way too often or in way too predictable of a manner, right? So we got this one, right, 2S. It's his fastest move, so you might be thinking, like, okay, well, what about this one right here? What's the point of this one, then? This one is his longest range, or this one is his fastest, and this is his most longest range, right? And then he has this one as well, which is also long range. What's the point of using this move right here? Like, it doesn't have as much range as 6HS, and it doesn't have the speed of 2S. So what's the purpose of it? Well, the purpose of this one right here is this is his least committal move. It has the least amount of end lag on any of his moves, which means it's extremely hard to whiff punish, and it's also only -5 on block. Right, so it's like, look at this right here. You could actually do this. Okay, maybe not with that move, because it hits low. So, okay, see, I did it right there. See, so if some players are like a little too trigger happy with, like, mashing afterwards at this range, you can actually whiff punish it. I mean, that one's not gonna hit because of the hitbox. It's, like, really low. But let's say if we do this right here. See, you can use it. That's what non-committal means right there. Like, this move recovers so fast that you can, like, hit him and then whiff punish that move right there, right? So that's what that means. So, like, that's where this move's strength lies, is basically, like, it doesn't have the range and of some moves, and it doesn't have the speed of some other moves, but the commitment on it is so low, right? So that's why you can use it in neutral, and if it whiffs, it's generally not going to be that big of a deal because it's so hard to whiff punish. It has so little recovery frames that before the opponent can see that it whiffed, it's too late. You know, you can already block again. Right, so it's a great way to, like, contest space because it's so hard to whiff punish, and it's so non-committal. And then it's only -5, and then also on top of that, you have extensions too, which makes it, like, really dangerous even if the opponent blocks it. Right, so that's, like, Kai's normals right there. Like, you already know about Kai's setups and stuff. I don't know. You know about some of his tech. Do you have any other questions? I'll do the same thing that I do with Goob. Do you have any? I know that you're in the chat right now. Do you have any questions, or do you have anything that you want me to go over, or anything like that? I'm gonna, like, go to the washroom and then I'll come back real quick, and I'll answer anything that you have. Haha, alright, I'm back, but there's no, like, message, so I don't know if he went, like, AFK or something. Or maybe he's messaging me, maybe he's saying something and I'm just not seeing it. It's not showing up on my phone, because that's how I'm, like, actually looking at the chat right now. Okay, cool. Alright, so you don't have anything right now? Okay, cool. So, well, hopefully that was helpful then. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream now, since you don't have any questions. Then yeah, you can, like, just sit on what we talked about, go into training mode, and, like, you know how to play the game, but, like, you know how to play the game, you know how to do your combos and stuff, but I would say go into training mode and really pay attention to distance management, range management, distance management, and getting comfortable with your normals. Get comfortable being in this position and not doing this, right? Because that's like the sign that tells me, like, okay, this person isn't comfortable using their neutrals in this range, right? So they'll force an interaction, and then you do that, then you get 6P'd, and then you get counter hit, and then you're in a combo, and then you're getting busted through the wall, and then you lose a round, right? So this is more of like something you do when you read your own opponent, and you're like, hey, he's like throwing out a lot of laggy moves. I'm just gonna go over it and do that, right? This is really risky to do when, like, in the neutral where I haven't committed to anything, right? So, I'll talk to you in the Discord. I don't know. These are really fun. I like doing them. I wish Goob was around more so I could do these for him too. But, I don't know. Hopefully it was helpful. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream now, and I'll talk to you later. Alright. Peace.